Former State Senator Richard Tisei was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives in 1984, becoming the youngest Republican elected in Commonwealth history. If I am not mistaken, you were 11 years old. Yes? Great. Boy wonder. He served as a member of the Education Committee and the Committee on Government Regulations. In 1990, Richard was elected to the State Senate, which began a run in which he was re-elected 10 times. He served as a member of the Ways and Means Committee and in a number of other leadership capacities, and in 2006, his colleagues chose him to serve as Senate Minority Leader, a position he held through 2010. So at this time, I invite Richard Tisei to come up to get some questions, and for those who would like to applaud for Richard Tisei, you are welcome to do so now.
Thank you very much. I told David a little earlier I will not use my opponent's straightness against them during this election. Good. I'm glad you got the joke. Thank you. Hey, first of all, let me just thank Go Out Loud and Boston Spirit for hosting tonight's forum. I think it is important to have all the candidates come and for you to get to know us and what we're all about. Before I go any further, I have to recognize my husband, Bernie, who's right in the front row here. Bernie was a little horrified to see the things that were given out with his photo on him. He's not very political, but I do have to say that I am the person who I am because of Bernie and all the love that he's given me and support. I wouldn't be here tonight as a candidate, and I wouldn't be the person I am without him. So please give him a round of applause. I thought just a couple of things I would say just in this, in my introduction, I think that are important. David mentioned that I served in the Senate for 20 years, and during that time I had an opportunity to work with a lot of LGBT advocates and allies to try to push a lot of different pieces of legislation through. Obviously, the most historic bill in the entire time I was there during that 20-year period was the marriage equality fight that took place at the State House. And most people, I think, here remember that it wasn't just the court approving marriage equality, because the minute that happened, there was a constitutional amendment filed to take those rights away. And for 4 years, there was a battle that took place at the State House. And I was thinking about this the other day, just how far our state has come over the past 10 years. I remember there was one gentleman who called me every week. I'd inevitably bump into him all the time, and he was very much against, very passionate against gay marriage. The calls were coming in 20-1 against it. Most Democrats at the State House supported civil unions, not gay marriage. And I had an opportunity to bump into him about 3 weeks ago, and he came up to me and said, "You know what? I'm sorry. You know, I had the wrong position. Over time, I've really looked at this, and I'm ashamed that I was so opposed to it at the time, but I know it was the right thing to do now." And some of the arguments that we had about it ended up he told me, helping to change his mind. So the one thing I have learned during my time in public office is that the best way to continue moving ahead and to see progress on our issues are to engage and reach out to our opponents rather than to attack and vilify them. And that's what has to be done, I think, in the long run, because it does pay a lot of dividends. It has here in Massachusetts. Finally, I would say that my party, in particular, hasn't been very attentive to LGBT issues. And one of the things that really excites me about this campaign is not only the opportunity to go to Washington to fight to change the direction of this country, but also the opportunity that I'll have to help bring the Republican Party into the 21st century on these issues. So thank you very much for having me here.
Since you brought up the topic of marriage equality, question number one: what measures would you take to have marriages, civil unions more recognizable outside of Massachusetts and the states where it is now legalized in regards to specific rights of married couples such as Social Security, power of attorney, health care, etc.?
The action that has to be taken is for DOMA to be completely repealed. And the Supreme Court repealed Section 3 of DOMA last summer, if you remember, and that was the section that allowed federal benefits to you to be able to enjoy as a married couple all of the federal benefits. That was huge, and at the time, Bernie and I have been talking about getting married for years and years, and when that happened, we said, you know what, now's the time. And a month later, after that Supreme Court ruling, we got married because we knew, and it felt great to have the federal government respect our relationship and respect our marriage. Unfortunately, Section 2 did not get repealed, and Section 2 pretty much means that all the rights that were afforded here in Massachusetts, if Bernie and I were to move to Indiana or South Carolina or other states that don't have marriage equality in those states, for the most part, we're out of luck. And we don't get a lot of those federal benefits, particularly the Social Security and other things. And, you know, this ring is really important to me, and our relationship and our marriage is really important to me. And it shouldn't matter if we're married in Massachusetts, if we're living in Massachusetts or another state. And I think most people understand that that's a matter of fairness. So repealing DOMA completely is something that would be on my agenda. I would support the Respect for Marriage Act in the Congress. I would co-sponsor that bill, and also co-sponsor the Social Security and Marriage Equality Act. And I think that we really, long-term, what we're looking at is, again, the repeal of DOMA, and it might not happen in the Congress, but I definitely think it's going to end up happening within the courts. Same thing like Lovey versus Virginia for interracial marriage. At one point, the court's going to come out and rule that denying people their basic civil rights is unconstitutional. And until that happens, we're going to have to fight state to state. And I was very honored to be able to be a signer on the amicus brief, a friend of the court brief for Proposition 8 for California. When the Supreme Court ended up hopefully looking at that brief and overturning that law. And just last week, I signed on to a brief, a friend of the court brief, to overturn DOMA in Michigan. We're going to make progress as we go along. And I just think it's really important right now for people to recognize that we're living in a great time. It might seem frustrating to people, but if you think about everything that's happened state by state and all the changes that have taken place, it is a very exciting period of time. And I hope, as the congressman, to be able to go down to Washington and help propel and be a catalyst to bring more change forward.
All right. I'm going to give you a quick time check so you know you've got a little bit over 4 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So keep us on track.
Okay.
In a recent issue of Boston Spirit magazine, we did an article on LGBT teen homes, and it's a rampant problem right now. The numbers are staggering. What steps would you take to approach the issue of homelessness with LGBTQ youth?
Obviously a huge issue. There shouldn't be any homelessness, particularly among children and young people in particular who are part of the LGBT community. You know, you get to the point where it's so hard for so many of them to get to the point to accept themselves for who they are, and then they go to their families and find out that, you know, the families reject them and, you know, toss them out. And, you know, I think on the big picture, it's tolerance. We have to continue to teach more tolerance and try to continue to change people's opinions on this issue. But on the short term, I really do think it's more of a state issue than a federal issue. There are a couple of federal discretionary programs that we can try to make sure that the money goes to the programs here that are the most beneficial for this problem. But on the state level, Massachusetts is usually pretty good, and we're moving ahead with a number of things. I think the kids who find themselves homeless, number one, are in a different type of situation because they're leaving an unsafe environment, and to go into a shelter, more often than not, they're entering a very much more unsafe environment. So I do think that it's incumbent upon the state to set up training programs for everybody who's involved in housing, right down to the local level, so they know how to deal and know how to best help these kids who need help the most. I'd also say that we need more short-term safe houses, specifically geared to the LGBT community, and specific shelters as well. We have some pilot programs. This is all very new to the state that are going on. There's the Youth on Fire program in Cambridge that I'm familiar with, and also the Mass Housing and Shelter Alliance are doing a lot specifically for our LGBT community, and we should continue to do everything we can to support them in their efforts to try to resolve this issue.
Thank you. With regard to the job market, What are your plans to ensure equality in the job market? What would you plan to entail, and how would you measure if it is successful?
The job market, as most people know, or trying to get a job isn't very good right now. But I would say that the issue for our community, more than any other, is the Employment Non-Discrimination Act that's in Washington right now. And I got to say, we should all have zero tolerance for any discrimination in the workplace. No one should be fired from their job for being gay or having their employers think they're gay. That's totally unacceptable. There is a bill right now in Congress. It's stuck in the House of Representatives, and I just want to let people know that I will co-sponsor that piece of legislation. I think it's really important. And it isn't, there are a lot of sponsors. The problem is getting the bill through onto the floor. And I will sign a discharge petition to make sure that that bill ends up on the floor. And I look forward to being an advocate, not only here in this district, but throughout the country, to try to get that done. Some people have said to me, well, you might have a problem, with the Speaker of the House on that bill. What will you do? And I just want to let people know, when marriage equality was being debated at the State House, I looked Mitt Romney right in the eye, and I told him he was wrong on the issue, and he was on the wrong side of history. And I want people to know that, I believe in what I believe in. And I will have no problem telling the Speaker or the leadership that this bill, that this is the right thing to do, and nobody should be discriminated against, and everybody should be treated equally and fairly under the law. And let me just say in conclusion that I've always said, for those of us who really care about equality and put that first, we're never going to have true equality in this country unless we have people in both political parties who are willing to stand up for what's right. Stand up for the fact that every American should be treated equally and fairly under the law. And if I'm the congressman from this district, you can be sure that that's exactly what I'll do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, I will say at the very least, you've got a wonderful sense of timing. It's a perfect 10 minutes.